Well, good morning, everyone. Pastor Corey Rowland here with Yorksville First, Midvale, and Newport United Methodist Church, bringing you a devotional today out of the book of John. In John 11, verse 32, it says, "Now when Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet, saying, 'Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died.'" This is the famous story of Lazarus and Mary and Martha. They had sent word to Jesus that Lazarus, his cousin, was dying, and they told him to rush over right away. And Jesus couldn't make it there in time, so by the time he gets there, Lazarus is already dead, and Mary gives him the very honest words of how she's feeling. She says, "Lord, if you had been here, he would not have died." And we cannot help but feel some kind of connection to what Mary is saying, because I think if we're being honest with ourselves, so many of us have felt like this when we've suffered hardship, or when we experience loss of a loved one, or when we experience difficulties. Lord, where were you? Lord, where were you when I was doing this? Where were you when I was experiencing this? Where were you when I was sick? Where were you when my loved one passed away? And we want to just shake our fist, because we know that if God wills it, that everything would be right. We know that at the snap of his fingers, he could heal everything, that nothing bad would ever happen to us, that we would live in absolute perfection. And so we want to say sometimes, God, do you hear us? God, do you see our struggles? God, are you with us? If you had been here, this would not have happened. But the truth of the scriptures that we need to remember is the many, many, many verses throughout both Old and New Testament where God says, "I will never leave you nor forsake you." We need to remember the scriptures in Hebrews where it says that Jesus suffered every way like us. Our high priest suffered in every way like us, so that he understands, he knows what we're going through. And it says that we can come to the throne, boldly to the throne, because we have a high priest who understands our condition and what we go through. We have a high priest who walks with us. God of the Bible and Jesus are unlike anyone else in the fact that they are high and lofty gods, but they are lowly and humble enough to care for us. The message of the Bible is that you are seen by God, you are loved by God, and you are saved by God. Now, God never promised us an easy life, but God is also not to blame for our problems, because those are a result of the sinful world we're living in. And it is only because of our sin that there is death, there is suffering, there is pain, there is imperfection. Now, God never promised to alter the consequences, and sometimes there are consequences for that sinful, broken world, because this isn't heaven yet. But there are a few things that you can always make sure that God has promised to you. One, he will never leave you nor forsake you. Two, he will always be with you, even if you can't see him. And sometimes when you need him the most, that's when it's the hardest to see him, because we're so focused on our problems. And so we need to remember to shift our priorities, and we need to remember to look to Jesus. You know, the story of Lazarus goes that as Jesus saw the tomb of Lazarus, he himself wept, because he loved Lazarus, because he was closest to Lazarus. And even though he was going to raise Lazarus from the dead, he was overcome with the emotions of all the people, because he knew exactly how they felt and knew exactly what they were going through. So my message for you today is you are seen, you are heard by God, and Jesus is always with you. All you have to do is lean on him. Amen.